was the whole anonymous movement, and seeing these people, like Nancy was saying, that had never been in, had never seen anything, but knew of both stories and abuses and what was going on and how Scientology was covering that up. And despite, you know, the terror stories of the harassment and everything else, just going at it and exposing it, that was huge. I mean, I've met some of the nicest people I know in Anonymous, and every time I meet them, I'm like, you know, you people amaze me. You're an inspiration, and, you know, what right do I have to, yes, it's true that the post-traumatic stress and everything else is huge when you leave. On the other hand, I can say personally that after I decided, you know, enough is enough, and started talking out and overcame that fear, that was a huge therapeutic moment for me, and has been ever since. That, you know, to stand up to the bullies and say, no, you do not have the right to do this to people, and do something to expose it and stop it. And so the Anonymous movement was 50% of what brought me to speak out. Number two was when Scientology had child services show up at my door. Those were the two things that drove me and made me realize that until I did something about it, they were going to continue to get away with bloody murder.
Good points. Good points.
All good points.
Yes. Dave Love is still on, too. Did you have a comment about Anonymous?
Deborah, this is Lori. Could I mention something real quickly?
Yeah, please do.
One of my best friends, I call him my big brother, is part of Anonymous. And the support that they have given me is incredible. The day that Jeremy was in the hospital having surgery, a person from Anonymous went down to the local organization of Scientology and stood out there with a sign saying, "We love Lori." And this is when my son was in surgery, and he was also saying, "Scientology disconnects families." And these are the people that I had known, you know, outside. And so the support they give me and to everyone else is just incredible.
Fantastic. Well, we've got another caller. We've got a few callers here, but David, go ahead, and then I'll let the callers go ahead. David?
Just one point. Just one point on Anonymous. I was pretty lost when I left, and if it wasn't for Anonymous helping me out on the forums and whatnot, and then through emails and whatnot, I would have been pretty well lost. So they're a great great bunch of people for sure. I'd just like to mention one more thing, if I could. With the post-traumatic stress disorder, it's very traumatic, and I noticed when I left, and I think the rest could probably felt the same. I felt very violated, and it's just a very traumatic thing. And even, you know, when, you know, Mark comes on, and it's hard not to get emotional about this stuff, even with your guests that you have on now, because it's really painful. You have to peel off layer after layer, and you keep re-experiencing it. So kudos to these ladies that came on. They're superstar women. Thank you.
Exactly, and that's such a good point.
And I'd like to say one thing, if I could. This is Satay. We call it peeling the onion, and it can take decades for people to release this stuff, to have it come up and then to release it again. PTSD is something that, for so many of us, gives us nightmares, anxiety, terrors. It makes it difficult to trust people, organizations. It's really a huge thing.
Yes, I agree with you. And this is Claire. You know, Mark and I have often talked about the decompression period that people go through, that we went through. But I will say, and I can, you know, it's based on specifics that I've observed, that I do firmly believe that as a result of people speaking out, and also the network that has developed as a result of that, people getting in contact and sharing experiences, and the therapeutic value of that. I believe personally the decompression period has dramatically reduced for many people, and it's easier for them to talk out much sooner as a result.
Good point. I do need to, we were speaking of Anonymous, and one of my contacts there, Damien, just sent me a message. We're planning another Scientology show, so just so you guys have this for your notes, on February 15, we're going to have another show with Victoria Britton. She's the mother of the 20-year-old young man, Kyle Britton, who lost his life to Scientology 6 years ago when he was found dead under highly suspicious circumstances. The show will be on February 15, which is one day before the 6th anniversary. It's going to be tough for her. We did a show on the 5th anniversary with her attorney and some Luke LaRoe. But anyway, this is coming up on the 15th, so just subscribe to God Discussion, and we announce all of that there. But anyway, I needed to say that before I forgot. We've got several callers coming in, so and ladies, just pick up, with the questions, and if you can just say your first name, it would be helpful. This next call is from 337 area code.
Hi.
Let me see. Hello. Thank
Hi.
you for joining the God Discussion Show and the fabulous ex-women.
Yes, they are fabulous. This is Tara, and I'm calling from Louisiana.
Well, thank you, Tara.
Hi. I'd like to thank all of the ex-women for speaking out. I left the Church of Scientology in 1999 for the sake of my two little girls, who at the time were 4 and 6 years old. I was on staff in Louisiana, and honestly really didn't have a clue what international Scientology was about,
Mm-hmm.
I went out to Los Angeles, and I kind of observed these vagabond kids and heard stories of, my son was arrested for graffiti, and, the stories didn't fit anything from what I'd learned,
Mm-hmm.
So basically I just fled with my kids once I saw that, and thank God I did, But the stories that these ladies tell are important because they tell the story to people like me who have no clue out in the boondocks or wherever. And Scientology, I use parts of it that are good for me without the organization,
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I just want to thank them so much for coming out and talking about it.
I agree. Satay, can you address that a little bit? And I think Nancy can, too, because she was talking about the children in Los Angeles.
I'm so glad that she called in and shared that, because speaking out is so hard, but to know that by doing this that people are saved from ruining their lives and destroying their families is really fantastic. So thank you to that caller for calling in.
Exactly. Nancy, did you have a comment about that?
Well, the one thing that I consider myself very blessed in is that after the Sea Organization, the billion-year contract, I remained what they call a public Scientologist, which they're not in every single part of your life, although they try. And there were Scientology schools that a good Scientologist was expected to put their children in Scientology schools. And both my husband and I came from families of educators. And we just looked at the tests, the standardized state test forms of these schools. And Scientology schools performed so far below the national average that I just felt it was insane for anyone to send their kid there at all. When it came to high school, I said, okay, I'll look at it again. It's been a few years. Maybe things have changed. And I called their best high school, the Delphi organization. This is supposed to be their flagship. And I called them up, talked to their registrar, said I'm looking into schools, a private high school for my son, and I wanted to ask a few questions. And she said, fine. And I said, what are your SAT scores? And she hesitated, and she said, what is an SAT score?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Now, that blew me away right there, but then I'm thinking, okay, there are other tests out there that kids can take that are standardized American high school graduate tests. So I said, well, tell me what colleges and universities your graduates have been accepted to. And she said, well, we really don't. A lot of our graduates joined the C organization, and we are very proud of that. So it's like a little feeder machine of these Scientology schools that make good little teenage Sea Org members. That is the end result they're going for.
How, one of the stories that really struck me tonight was Claire's, that she was in this since she was 4 years old. I mean, these children that are in this and this type of education, what kind of an effort is it to even get them out, or can they even be freed?
It's been very heartbreaking in my life because I've had a few of these children come to me. Basically, they're a mess. They're 22 years old. They're missing 4 years. I mean, if you can think back to your high school, it was 4 full years every day of education. And this one young woman, she was unable to work. She had really no skills, wasn't even a good filer, and she sat at home with the big fat GED book and was trying to teach herself how to get through a high school diploma, 4 years of education, by herself alone in a room with a book. And I told her that the community, I researched and got it all together, which I also used for future people, that the community colleges will test you. They'll say, okay, your math is at this grade level, your English is at this grade level, and they will then get you going in specific courses to bring you to high school level in all of those areas and teach you things like history that these kids don't even know. And she was petrified to go there because Scientology illegally kept her out of school. So she didn't want to make a bad impression for Scientology, if you can think with how horrible that is. So I basically told her, don't even bring up Scientology. Just go in there, say you have no records because you were homeschooled, and take the test and move forward, which is what she did. I don't know if she actually finished, but at least she was on a path and out of that room crying over this big, massive book of 4 years' worth of life that she never got. Just
my
tragic.
God. That's absolutely tragic.
Yeah, that's just horrific, is what it is.
It is. We've got lots of callers coming in, so I'm going to go with the next one, which is area code 260. He actually brought up a very good point about why do they call this science, Scientology?
I would really like to speak to this because I have a long history in the religious, quote-unquote, nature of Scientology.
Who is this?
Nancy.
Okay.
This is Nancy. Now, first of all, when I first joined, and anyone who joined between the 60s and the 70s and into the early 80s will remember Hubbard put out a policy, which now David Miscavige has changed. It was on the religious nature of Scientology, and it said, we are a religion for accountant and legal purposes only. Our day-to-day business continues. That never bounced into any contradictions.
In Anonymous, and every time I meet them, I'm like, you people amaze me. You're an inspiration, and what right do I have to? Yes, it's true that the post-traumatic stress and everything else is huge when you was the whole Anonymous movement and seeing these people, like Nancy was saying, that had never been in, had never seen anything, but knew of both stories and abuses and what was going on and how Scientology would leave. On the other hand, I can say personally that after I decided, enough is enough and started talking out and overcame that fear, that was a huge therapeutic moment for me and has been ever since. That covering that up and despite, the terror stories of the harassment and everything else, just going at it and exposing it, that was huge. I mean, I've met some of the nicest people I know, to stand up to the bullies and say, no, you do not have the right to do this to people, and do something to expose it and stop it. And so the anonymous movement was 50% of what brought me to speak out. Number two,